Members of the London Green Party will soon be voting to select their candidate for the 2024 London mayoral election. At the time of recording, two candidates have put themselves forward. The first of them is Zoe Garbett, who is a councillor in Hackney, and the second is Benali Hamdache, a councillor in Islington. Before I introduce the candidate that's with me today, I just have one thing to remind you to do, which is to scroll down right now and hit that subscribe button. It means that you won't miss out on the other interviews we're putting out with the candidates throughout the campaign, and also any of the videos we're putting out in the coming weeks and months. So without further ado, I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Benali Hamdache. Benali, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Christmas, just about dealing with all the leftovers, presents are unwrapped, it's all good.
Well, glad that you are well and glad that Christmas was hopefully rejuvenative and relaxing. So to kick things off, I have a hopefully straightforward question for you, which is just what makes you the best person to be the Greens candidate for London Mayor?
So I think I want to start off with some home truths. So I was the campaign manager for the London election last time, the most successful in our history. But because I was so close to that campaign, I know where our shortfalls are. And I know a lot of voters perceive us as too white, too middle class, and too outlandish. And so our challenge is to show a diverse face of the party. It's to show credible, good ideas that people are excited about, but also make sense. And so that's why I'm putting myself forward. I'm one of only two ethnic minority councillors in London. My background, I'm half British, I'm half Algerian, I'm working class, I'm a gay man, I'm proud of my heritage, and I'd love to put my life story and my experience at the centre of what we're doing, because that's ultimately where politics is right now. We have to have a candidate who can carry the torch and kind of really create that compelling story and narrative that voters are excited by.
So you talked there about kind of your background, and you mentioned at the end the compelling story that you want to motivate voters with. I wondered if we could delve into that a little bit, and you could set out for us what your vision is for London.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I want to start off with is that I've lived in London for 10 years and I love this city. But I think as well, a lot of us have a love-hate relationship with this city, because for a lot of people, it is a really hard city to live in, whether that's your rent costs, your travel costs, the cost of living crisis, the amount of people living in damp and cold, mouldy homes. This really is a tale of two cities, and the inequality that exists in London is both heartbreaking, but utterly unfair and should be right at the center of the campaign that we're talking about. And I've lived it. I know what it's like to be so poor in London you can only afford crisps for lunch, or to be having to be struggling with payday loans, or being stressed about being able to make rent. And I think London voters want to back a candidate who understands their struggle and will prioritize it and will fight for them with the ferocity that they'd expect from a candidate. And I think ultimately there's so many little bits and big bits where Sadiq Khan hasn't shown that kind of visionary leadership that we need from London Mayor, and hasn't kind of had the courage. And ultimately it's been Greens on the London Assembly dragging him to take the necessary measures, whether that's from the ultra low emission zone or getting him to even talk about rent controls, never mind to campaign for them. So I think there's a really big opportunity for us to have a bigger, bolder, greener, fairer story and vision than what Sadiq is offering right now. But I think it's really important as to who we choose to centre and to lead that campaign. And that's why I put myself forward, because I know I can help. I can tell those stories, I can connect, I know what it's like to experience racism, I know what it's like to experience poverty, I know what it's like to have your interview application turned away because you're a foreign sounding name, all those kinds of inequities that Londoners deal with on a regular basis. And I think ultimately when we saw Sadiq Khan's big surge when he was first elected, a lot of that was down to his personal story. It was down to his experience. It was down to the story that he could tell about himself as a candidate. I mean, we laugh, right? Like, son of a bus driver, son of a bus driver. You heard it over and over again. But that's because voters vote for people. And I think that's why I'm putting myself forward. I'm proud of what I've done with my life. I'm proud to be a Green councillor. I'm proud of my heritage. And I think together with our excellent green policies, we can create our best ever result for London.
I want to fast forward now to May 2024. And imagine you're on the 6th of May or the 5th of May, whenever the day after the election is, and you've just been elected as Mayor of London, and you're sitting in City Hall, I wonder if you could talk us through what the first 100 days of a Benali Hamdache mayoralty would look like.
So I think we have to start off by saying that austerity has damaged London in ways that it's hard sometimes to kind of conceptualize. And, you know, we saw it with TfL, where the government almost bankrupted TfL because they were playing silly buggers and they wanted to damage a Labour mayor. So I think reversing the impact of austerity and looking at what tools we have available to us to generate revenue and to protect frontline services. And I think one idea that I particularly want to kick off with is about a workplace parking levy, because it is a huge example of where Sadiq hasn't led the way. Now, I'm originally from Nottingham. Nottingham is the only council in the country that has gone with the workplace parking levy. Now, what this is it's any employer who is providing more than 8 parking spaces has to pay a tax. There's lots of reasons why this is a good idea, because employers providing parking spaces incentivize driving into the centre, which is obviously not green, not good for air pollution. But the income that Nottingham generated paid for a brand new tram network that has connected all over different bits of Nottinghamshire. And now Nottingham has really high levels compared to a lot of other cities of public transport ownership. Now, London Green figures say that a workplace parking levy could raise roughly £500 million a year. That is not to be sniffed at. And, you know, the amount of exciting kind of new deals that we could get out of TfL, whether that's extending the DLR, or looking at other extensions like the Bakerloo, that is real money. I think the other thing that I'd be really championing would be a tourist tax. So countless European cities, or, you know, charge a tenner when you arrive at the hotel to keep local services going. And I think, you know, lots of tourists don't bat an eyelid. It's just something that's part of life. And again, the Centre for Cities say that this could also raise almost £500 million. So together, you're looking at £1 billion worth of revenue a year. Now, when you say the GLA's total income is £7 billion, that comparatively is a huge uplift in where the city is. And there's so many vital frontline services that desperately could do with that money, whether that's the desperate cuts that London Youth Services have experienced. I mean, it's down to Greens on the London Assembly that those have been mitigated and millions have been protected to reduce the cuts. But actually, with that amount of money, we could start to look at expanding youth services. And when, you know, there's a youth violence crisis in the city, preventative services like that are so vital. So, you know, tourist tax, workplace parking levy, pay-as-you-go road charging is another big idea that London Green Assembly members have been championing. That's the idea that instead of a road tax, you'd be paying for the amount of miles driven. And actually the urgency that that's needed, particularly when electric cars are expanding, who aren't paying you know, fuel duty, but the chance to have that tax devolved and implemented as soon as possible is going to keep TfL funded in a way that means that government can't blackmail and bully whatever the administration of the day is. So, you know, I have to say the number one priority, summed up in a word, would be reversing austerity, fighting austerity, and looking at what tools we've got to get money into vital services.
We want to look now at what the campaign might look like. So the 2024 election, it's for London Mayor, it's the electorate for that election is essentially the whole of London, depending on where you draw the boundaries and what London is and what isn't in the mayoral election. But in that election, you know, that's sort of, I think the whole electorate is, you know, upwards of 6 million people. Obviously the voting electorate is much lower than that, but all political parties in that will be trying to pull together and create an electoral coalition of different groups of voters in order to deliver the result they want to see. What do you think the Green Party's electoral coalition needs to be in that 2024 mayoral election?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, so again, campaign manager of the last election have been right on the, you know, the forefront of that last campaign, which was our most successful. I do think that we have to really look hard at how we're winning over disaffected Labour voters. They are the biggest group of London voters available to us, whether that's they're disappointed by Sadiq Khan building Silvertown Tunnel, or they look at Keir Starmer's position on migrants or nationalised services or protecting the NHS. I think it is about finding those keystone issues that are going to peel Labour voters off, because they are absolutely our biggest competition. I mean, ultimately, if you look at the Lib Dem vote at the last mayoral election, there isn't much of it left. They were, under 5%. People are not seriously considering London Lib Dems when it comes to these London-wide elections. So ultimately, the biggest pool of voters available to us is Labour voters. But I think the one thing I want to say is the biggest priority is reaching them. And I think we shouldn't underplay the importance of fundraising. Now, London Green Party is really efficient with the money that we raise. And if you look at the amount of money spent per vote gained, only Sadiq Khan has a higher efficiency rating. It's something like 60, 70p that we pay per vote. Meanwhile, the Lib Dems kind of is way less efficient. But when you look at the amount of money we raise for our campaigns, we're solidly in fourth. We are far behind the Lib Dems, far behind the Tories. And that has a real impact on our campaign and the amount of people we can reach. And so I have to say, I think one of the most important things that we need from our mayoral campaign is we need a mayoral candidate who's going to be the fundraiser in chief, who's going to go out and find, whether that's inspiring our membership to donate, but I think really importantly, looking at ethical sources of major donors and making those connections and getting those people to, save the planet and make a green wave happen in London. And I believe those people exist. But I think, we have to be crystal clear that the mayoral candidate needs to see this as a vital part of their job, because I think we've run really, really good campaigns before. It's just that so many voters haven't heard us because we've not been able to reach them, whether that's because of our capacity, whether that's because of our amount of reach on Facebook, or whatever kind of spend we're looking at. So I really think that needs to be a priority, and we need to be confident that our candidate is going to get, and I've been a professional fundraiser for a number of parts of my life. I've worked with major donors when I was in the Green Party. I can bring that experience to this campaign.
I want to pick up a little bit on the first half of your answer there, because obviously at Bright Green, a huge proportion of our viewers are Green Party members or supporters, but a substantial portion of them are also people who have traditionally voted Labour, particularly those on the left of the Labour Party. Maybe they flirted with the Greens in 2015, but generally speaking, they tend to vote Labour. So you said there that the disaffected Labour voters is the biggest pool of potential voters for the Greens. So what one single thing would you say to someone who's a traditional Labour voter in order to convince them to vote Green in 2024?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think, first of all, Greens have a real track record of getting progressive ideas over the line on the London Assembly. And that track record extends for the 22 years that the London Assembly exists, whether that's championing civil unions before and civil partnerships before the whole country introduced them. That's Ken Livingstone was on the verge of scrapping the entire cycling budget when he was first declared mayor. TfL did not see cycling as a transport. And today we know that that's absolutely wrong-headed, but it was down to Greens on the London Assembly making that case. And, Sian, millions into youth services. That was her campaigning work, her championing. So, if you want a Labour administration to be more effective, a really strong Green voice on the Assembly is so important. But I don't think we should underestimate as well the power and value of sending a message to Labour Party nationally. I'm absolutely in despair, of course, about this Conservative government, but I spend as much time in despair of what's coming out of Keir Starmer, whether that's rhetoric around migration and immigrant doctors, or that's Wes Streeting opening the door to privatisation of NHS services, or, some of the really unpleasant transphobia that's being kind of allowed and accepted by the Labour Party. If people want to send a message voting for a really clearly, solidly, bold, radical, progressive voice, that's why I'm putting myself forward, because I think that is where the recipe for success lies. And particularly in a city like London, where, if polls are to be believed, we're on the verge of kicking out every nearly Tory MP in the city. And, voting in politics in London is different. There is a different kind of electorate that we should be really focused on.
So my final serious question before I finish on the slightly more flippant ones is about this election in particular, compared to previous mayoral elections. And one thing that is particularly unique about the 2024 mayoral election is, of course, that it's going to be the first that will be contested under Firstpastthepost, as opposed to under the system that's almost alternative vote but not quite, and I can't pin the name down at the moment in my head, but it's the first one that's going to be under Firstpastthepost, rather than the electorate having more than one vote, more than one preference, where they can vote with so-called with their heart, with their first preference, and with their quote-unquote head with the second preference, which the Greens have historically benefited from in campaigning and saying, look, you can vote with your first preference for the Greens, and then if you really have to hold your nose and vote Labour, you can do that with your second vote. This one isn't going to be like that. It's a classic first past the post election, like we have in parliamentary seats. And with that in mind, what do you think realistically the Greens can deliver in terms of a result in this election?
Well, I mean, just to kick off, I think it's an absolute disgrace that we don't have the supplementary vote system. And the fact that the government took it away without a referendum is an absolute disgrace. London voters voted for a very specific way. They voted for the mayor to be elected by supplementary vote, and they voted for London Assembly elected by PR. And they did that via referendum. And actually, it's a serious overreach of central government to have not put it to voters to see whether or not they wanted to overturn their original vote. It's funny how, some of different kinds of powers are at play when it comes to second votes. I will say, though, I don't think we should necessarily presume that every single person who voted Green and with their first vote knowingly then did Labour second. There's a proportion of voters who didn't put Labour second at all. There's a proportion of voters who didn't even put anyone at the second preference. And I think actually, from my experience of door knocking and campaigning, people's understanding of the supplementary vote system is quite low anyway. People are this is probably one of the most complicated elections that exist. You've got your London Assembly ballot, but not only have you got one, you've got two. You've got your constituency ballot, you've got your list vote, your supplementary vote. And so I think a lot of people already were voting Green with a sense of boldness anyway, and a clarity that they wanted Green first. I think there are a portion of voters who did use their backup, but I think one of the most important things at the next election will be that strength of that Tory vote. And Sean Bailey, I know the pundits said that he was closer than expected, but it wasn't that close, really. And I think I expect that the next Tory candidate is going to do even worse than Sean Bailey. Either the next election is going to be just before a general election that we're all itching to kick the Tories out, or slightly after, again, which I don't really see the Tory vote recovering particularly quickly. So I really think the polls are going to be quite clear that where the starting position is that the Tories are going to be quite far behind. And I think what we have to really capitalise upon is sending that message that it's safe to vote Green with your heart on all three ballots. And really, if you want progressive politics in the London Assembly, if you want to send a message to Steve Khan for big, bold ideas, then the Green ballot is the most powerful tool. And I think we should be ambitious. We should be aiming for 4 or 5 London Assembly members. We should be aiming for a best ever result. We should be getting into double digits. And when you look at the success that the Green candidate had in Bristol, really challenging Marvin Rees, and I don't think Bristol politics or Bristol electorate is that different from London, and I think we could really do really well.
So, as promised, it's time for the slightly more flippant questions. And the first of them is, what is your favourite London borough?
So I'm a councillor in Islington. So for me to say anything other than Islington would be a betrayal. I don't know whether I could go into the town hall again. I've been in Islington for 8 years. I'm really proud of this borough. It's diverse. It's got a load of history. It's got a huge amount of heritage. I'm a councillor in Highbury, and I love my community. I love being able to make a difference. I love the fact that I can help people in my community. So there's a lot of close run seconds, and there's London boroughs, I love you, but Islington, I'm afraid I have to say first.
And what is your favourite tube line?
Oh well, so I'm going to go with Victoria, because it goes to where I need to go quickly. There's no faffing around. There's no endless short stops. It's reliable. I mean, I will complain it's maybe a bit too hot in the summer. And maybe when I'm mayor of London, we could look at some of the noise decibels when it get down to the south of the borough. But nothing cuts through and north to south in such an efficient way. But special shout out to Jubilee though. That's quite futuristic, isn't it?
What is your favourite London venue?
Oh, that's a good question. I think for me, I have a lot of fond memories of Ali Pali. So, there's something magical about being on that bus up that hill from the tube station. It goes forever. I think also when the age I am now in my 30s, they've got like a little food festival at the front when you're at a gig, and you feel like you're almost at Glastonbury, but not quite. You kind of have to take those glimpses of your youth when you can. I saw Robin there along with I think every single gay man in London at the same time. But one of my best ever gigs. Ali Pali, and also it's got all that heritage. It's like there's an ice rink and the wonderful view, and BBC was there, and there's a big tower, and when we get it on Crossrail 2, it'll be magical.
A very comprehensive endorsement of the Ali Pali there. Penultimate question: who is your favourite historical Londoner?
Well, I have to say, I do always try and live by the maxim of no heroes in politics, because they'll always disappoint you. No, but I think politics should be bigger than that. Favorite Londoner? Oh gosh, that is the problem. Is do I know where people are born? That is an important question. Let's go. I'm going to be really cheesy, actually, and I'm going to go for my colleague, Caroline Russell, one of the local Greens. She is, I think, someone that I'm truly inspired by. I'm really sorry, Caroline, that's a really cheesy answer, but 8 years of serving on Islington Council on her own in front of a Labour administration. I think she's a really inspiring politician who gets it in a big way. And yeah, I can't believe I didn't. Well, there we go. That's where that answer came out as.
So my final question, you may find challenging given your last answer. It's one that I always end these on, and it is: who in the Green Party inspires you the most?
Yeah, I'm going to go for Jean Lambert, actually. Jean was one of our MEPs for London since 1999. And I think actually it bears repeating that actually I think she's one of our most effective legislators in our history, and we should actually be a lot more aware of the really big changes that she helped win the year in Parliament for progressives, whether that's the right for EU migrants to be able to claim benefits in whichever member state they're in. What I think early on in my Green Party kind of membership, the Daily Mail did a full page kind of, this MEP believes that gypsies and roamers and travellers should have rights. And I have to say, like, just the pride of seeing Jean standing up for a community that faces atrocious racism. And I know that as a local councillor, because we're trying to find a site for the GRT community right now, and some of the stuff that comes into my inbox is really unpleasant. But Jean on migrants' rights, on GRT rights, did a load of work on Bangladeshi garment workers and their rights and their exploitation, also work on LGBTIQA plus rights as well. I think actually, we should be a lot more cognizant of the real changes and real wins that Jean Lambert has made. And, it's such a good story of the power a Green in the room can have.
Well, I'm sure Jean will appreciate that very much. So that's the end of my questions. Benali, thank you so much for joining us.
No worries, my pleasure.
So that was the second of our interviews with the candidates who are seeking to be the Green Party's candidates for London Mayor in 2024. At the time of recording, I'm not aware that there are any other people putting their name forward, but there may well be. The best way that you can find out is to scroll down right now and hit that subscribe button, because if there are any more candidates, we'll be interviewing them right here on this YouTube channel. I have a few final things just to say before I let you all leave. The first of which is, I'm sure there's plenty in there that you agree with from what Benali has said. There may even be some things that you disagree with. Let us know in the comments down below and keep the conversation going down there. We'd also love you to share this video. The more people that see these videos, the more people that get to hear from all the people that we interview, not just in these selections, but in all the rest of the content that Bright Green is putting out. And of course, if you are able to, Bright Green doesn't have the support of billionaires or big business. We rely solely on the kind and generous donations of people just like you. So if you are able to donate, please do head to bright-green.org/donate and set up a regular donation. So that's all from me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all very, very soon.